It's Friday, April 11th, 2025. Welcome to episode 149 of the Alameda Postcast, an audio service of the Alameda Post. I'm your host, Scott Peeler. In this edition of the Postcast, APD busts a fencing ring dealing in, yes, tailgates. AUSD's Teacher of the Year is from Paden, a preview of what's on the agenda for the Planning Board and the City Council. The Hands Off rally draws 1,000 protesters. Mayor Ashcraft named to the National Mayor's Institute on Pedestrian Safety. A few changes to the ferry schedules. It's National Poetry Month. Altarena Playhouse is honored and gets back on stage after an unexpected interruption. And another Alameda restaurant says goodbye. These stories and more on this episode of the Alameda Postcast. Our top story. On March 26th, Alameda police reported that they had arrested suspects and recovered thousands of dollars worth of merchandise stolen from businesses at South Shore Shopping Center and on Webster Street on March 17th. The APD investigation led to the discovery that stolen merchandise was being delivered to businesses at various locations and resold through a fencing operation. As the investigation progressed, several reports indicated stolen truck tailgates also were apparently being fenced, most notably from Toyota Tacoma pickups. On April 3rd, after a thorough investigation, officers and detectives executed a search warrant at a residence in another jurisdiction. The discovery? Several tailgates, thousands of dollars in cash, multiple firearms, ammunition, and what appears to be high-capacity magazines. 2 people were taken into custody, and detectives are in the process of contacting victims. APD continues to follow up on leads into other businesses and entities that may be involved in these activities. Story and photos at alamedapost.com/news. Congratulations are in order. Mike Wong, a 4th and 5th grade teacher at Paden Elementary since 2011, has been selected as the 2025 Alameda Unified Teacher of the Year. Colleagues who submitted recommendation letters described Mr. Wong as a thoughtful, creative teacher who nurtures not only individual student growth, but also school culture and leadership. In his application, Mr. Wong noted that his classroom, quote, runs on 3 tenets: critical thinking, problem solving, and altruism. End quote. In other AUSD news, the California Department of Education has added both Love Elementary and Bay Farm to the list of California distinguished schools. Catch up on all the district news at alamedapost.com/op-ed. Since our inception, the Alameda Post has brought you coverage of City Council, Planning Board, and other meetings central to the governing of our city. But even better than knowing what went on is knowing what's going to happen. As I reported in episode 147, you can now find previews of upcoming meetings so you can be informed and get involved when issues most directly affect you. Thanks to Karen Jensen, we've got a look ahead at Monday's Planning Board and Tuesday's City Council meetings. On Monday, the Planning Board will consider updating the Universal Residential Design Ordinance to reduce barriers to smaller and townhome-style developments. The board will also consider recommending that City Council approve new street names to replace placeholder names at Alameda Point. In episode 143, I reported that the Planning Board was grappling with issues raised by the Universal Residential Design Ordinance in an attempt to balance accessibility goals with housing production feasibility. Right now, there are 2 sets of accommodations to consider. Visitability accommodations focus on making homes accessible to guests with mobility impairments and apply to all units within new developments. Universal design accommodations focus on making the entire home accessible to all residents and visitors regardless of ability and currently apply to only 30% of new units in developments of 5 or more units. The key proposals are to provide a visitability requirements exemption for units with less than 150 square feet of habitable space on the ground floor, mainly townhouse designs where garages comprise most of the ground floor, and a universal design exemption for small projects with fewer than 10 units to reduce burdens on infill and small-scale developers. Also on the agenda, permanent names for streets in the new Reshape and West Midway Avenue projects at Alameda Point. Currently, 2 of the streets have placeholder names of Avenues A and B. The proposed name for A is Valor Avenue in remembrance of Alameda's military history, while B would be named Waves Avenue in honor of the Women Accepted for Volunteer Emergency Services Naval Reserve Unit created in World War II. Meanwhile, on Tuesday, City Council will consider design concepts for the Willie Stargell Avenue Complete Street Corridor project involving safety and transit improvements between Main Street and Mariner Square Loop. Among the proposed safety improvements, separated pedestrian and bicycle paths, traffic calming through narrowed lanes and center medians, safer crossings via bulb outs, flashing beacons, and high-visibility striping, as well as a separated westbound bike lane to connect with a future Webster Tube path. There are multiple other steps in the project, which is expected to extend past 2029. City Council will also consider authorizing a fourth lease amendment to extend Mishon Auction's repayment period for $77,739.73 in deferred rent for 2701 Monarch Street. The amendment will provide an additional 11 months to repay their 2020 COVID-19 rent relief program balance. Mishon's Auctions, the host of the popular Alameda Antiques Fair, is a long-standing Alameda Point tenant. They have already repaid over $170,000 of their original deferred rent balance of just under $248,000 and remain in good standing on all lease obligations. Staff says this extension will avoid hardship while ensuring full repayment without interest or penalties. Council will also consider authorizing a new agreement with Lincoln Property Company for property management services. LPC currently manages over 4 million square feet of city property and over 1,500 acres at Alameda Point. The total pre-commission cost will be $14.44 million over 6 years. That is fully offset by the leasing and licensing revenues, which bring in approximately $16 million annually. Staff analysis revealed that switching to in-house property management would result in a higher cost and loss of leasing revenue during setup. For ways you can get involved in either of these two meetings, look for Karen Jensen's preview articles at alamedapost.com/news. And when the meetings are wrapped up, she'll have the results there. And of course, we'll report them here on the Alameda Postcast.
Hey, hey, ho, ho! Trump and Musk have got to go! Hey, hey, ho, ho!
That was the scene last Saturday as over 1,000 Alamedans joined an estimated 3 million people nationwide in the hands-off protest aimed at the policies of the Trump administration. Similar protests were held in over 1,400 cities. Healthcare, LGBTQ plus rights, climate justice, and education were some of the topics represented through both signage and speech at the demonstration. The nationwide April 5th protests marked the largest day of public demonstration against Trump thus far in his second term, according to Newsweek. Story, pictures, and video with Sindhu Anantavel's story at alamedapost.com/news. One of the joys of Alameda, its incredible walkability, but sometimes that walkability is not easy. Pedestrian collisions are always just one bad decision away. In fact, on average in America, 20 pedestrians lose their lives each day. As part of efforts to improve safety, our own mayor, Marilyn Ezzy Ashcraft, was just named to the Mayor's Institute on Pedestrian Safety, or MIPS, joining 11 other mayors from Brockton, Mass. To Everett, Oregon, and points in between. A partnership between the Mayor's Innovation Project, Smart Growth America, and the AARP, MIPS is designed to equip local leaders with the tools and best practices to make meaningful safety improvements on dangerous roadways and create long-term systemic change. For a detailed look at the MIPS program, including comments from Mayor Ashcraft and the full list of this year's participants, head to alamedapost.com/news. If you take the ferry or the Woodstock shuttle and you've been away for spring break, make sure you take a close look at the timetable before you head to the dock. As of this past Monday, the schedules have been tweaked somewhat, mostly minor changes, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. For Woodstock, a slightly later final trip has been added Friday through Sunday, departing Oakland at 9:10 p.m. Finally had a chance to take advantage of Woodstock last week for a dual birthday celebration in Jack London Square. If you haven't taken advantage of the service, you should definitely give it a try. Beats the heck out of bridges and tunnels in my book. You can find the change at alamedapost.com/news. Search ferry schedule. April is National Poetry Month, and all month long we're featuring poetry from local Alameda poets. Head on over to alamedapost.com/poetry to check it out. Gene Kahane gets things kicked off. It's been a bit of good news, bad news for Alt Arena Playhouse. As we reported earlier, their latest production of Grease has opened to great reviews. The bad news, the old COVID bug reared its head, forcing the cancellation of last weekend's performances. But the show is back this weekend, and according to Alt Arena's social media feed, 3 shows have been added. Those dates will be made available to the public as soon as last weekend's patrons are accommodated. More good news for the Playhouse. The San Francisco Bay Area Theater Critics Circle handed out their annual awards last month. Once again, Alt Arena received the award for Best East Bay Production in a Theater of 100 to 300 seats, this time for its production of Doubt. This is a back-to-back win for Alt Arena, having claimed the prize for their 2023 production of Miss Bennet, Christmas at Pemberley. Our own Kelly Rogers Flint spoke with the folks at Alt Arena about the win. Find her article and her review of the current run of Grease at alamedapost.com/arts. In addition to Grease, there's an abundance of things to do in Alameda this weekend. If the choices at 94501.info are overwhelming, Amanda Laird has, as she does every week, curated a list of 5 noteworthy events that deserve your attention. Find that article all around Alameda at alamedapost.com/alameda-life. A sad note, this will be the last weekend to pay a visit to the Preacher's Daughter. In social media posts, the restaurant and music venue has announced that they are closing for good this Sunday. One of the posts did say to stay tuned for a new brunch spot this spring. Thank you for your support of local news for Alameda. Find us on all the usual social media outlets. And you can find the Postcast wherever you get your podcast, or simply tell your smart device to play the Alameda Postcast podcast. I'm Scott Peeler. I'll be back next Friday with episode 150 of the Alameda Postcast.